Okay, my friends, this is one of the biggest bombshells of my life. I've been trying to figure out eternity because I'm going to tell you right now, 100 years from now, I guarantee you, you are going to be dead. What happens then? For me, it's only a couple of years. So I got to figure this out pretty quick. Now, if you think it's just over and you just turn to dust and nothing ever happens and you have no obligations during your life, so who cares? You're just going to die and who cares? Well, that's up to you. And I always kind of felt that that was what was going to happen until I discovered the mud fossils. When I discovered the mud fossils, I said, whoa, I got to start and go back to the beginning. And this is what I'm going to do today. And this is just going to be a ramble. I don't know how to even approach the subject. All right, like I said, it's going to be a ramble. I'm just going to shoot from the hip. 10 or 12 years ago, I discovered mud fossils, gigantic human beings. And I knew what they were when I found them, like this fingertip. I mean, there was no question what it was. The fingerprints are on there and everything. So when I saw it, it was almost like 3 feet long. Nobody would listen. And I found a ton of this stuff. So I had it DNA tested, and everything proved to be what I thought it was. And I found this extremely interesting. I mean, wow. So I went very much deeper. Anybody's seen this, seen my stuff, seen this probably 100 times, and because nobody will follow up on it. Now, here's the sweat pores, and that's what the grip skin is. It popped right off of there, and I had to break it off so I could get down inside to extract excellent quality DNA, literal blood from within that finger. And these things gush blood. If you know where to find it, sometimes it's really hard, and you have to just drill it out of there. It comes out in, chunks. But it still was the blood. Okay, there was giants, but there was our size. There was giants in the earth in those days, and there was our kind of people. That's exactly the size of a human lung. This is another lung. This one was DNA tested as human. And you get it right out of the blood. They're loaded with blood. This one leaked blood out of its blood pores because the fabric had eroded off of it. You see the blood that's in there coming out? That's where these alveoli are here. Alveoli are the things that transfer the blood around the oxygen and pick up the oxygen. Now, these just leaked right out of these little blood pores. You see the little circles here? Those are those same things. Those are the alveoli. And this is the blood that came out of that big white, it's right now it's a quartz. It's silicates. They fill in the holes in these mud fossil conditions. Everything transitions. And if there's holes in things, they will a lot of times grow crystals to fill them. That's what quartz is. Now these were all DNA tested. They all came back human and excellent quality DNA. That's a left hand, and you can tell that's the bumper pad on your hand. It runs right down the edge of the little fluffy part. And then this silver stuff is the grip skin, just like I showed you on the giant fingertip. Your hands and your feet and your fingers and so forth have this extra layer of skin, very keratinized. This is the cleave right here in between your hand. All right, the left thumb runs off this way. And I have fingers from this, and I have a bunch of parts of this, knuckles and all kinds of things. Again, DNA tested, human. Now here it is right here. Excellent quality DNA sequence obtained for the 36-inch tip and the lung using these certain primers and so forth. This was quite a while ago. This was 6 years ago. 6 years ago. 2015. 7 years ago. And it was well done. I extracted the samples. I didn't send them the big finger and all that stuff. I sent them an extraction. So I was the one who extracted it. They tested what I sent them, and they stand behind the findings. It was human mitochondrial DNA, and it was dense. And, you can read this whole thing. I'll just scroll through it if you want to go back and read it. It's up to you. This was, I believe this was the first one ever done. and certainly the first one to this extent. This has been very, very fought against, and what was her name? Mary Schweitzer? No, I don't think it's Schweitzer. I can't remember what her name was, but she got in trouble for talking about this in the academic system, and they basically crushed her. And another guy ended up suing and getting $1 million. Mary, I got to look it up. Hold on. Yep, it was Mary Schweitzer. This is why we're not talking about any of this stuff. This is a Smithsonian magazine. Dinosaur shocker, probing 68-million-year-old T-Rex Mary Schweitzer stumbled upon astonishing signs of life, may radically change our view of the ancient beast. This is 2006. That's 15 years ago. And she could find this stuff, and she was finding gooey tissues, same thing I found. So I have a little bit of a history. I tried to get a hold of her, and she didn't want to talk to me. And so I called the guy in the room next to hers down in where she was teaching, and I says, I got an important message. Anyway, I did end up getting to, I don't think I ever spoke with her, but we communicated, and she said, please stay away from me. Anyway, I was trying to confirm what she said. And she didn't realize how devastated she would be by these people, and she did. Okay, here's an article from 2015, Soft Tissue in Dinosaur Bones. What does the evidence really say? Bones are not the key. This is the problem. They always think they have to have a bone. Bones were not the deal. Now, here again is Mary Schweitzer made worldwide headlines 2005, announcing she had discovered soft tissue preserved in 65-million-year-old dinosaur fossils. Those who deny the scientific evidence for the old age of the Earth have attempted to leverage this discovery to cast doubt on dating methods. And the dating methods are crazy. Carbon dating just doesn't work. And I've shown that. And I'll stand up in front of everybody because I have the evidence. I am trained in every one of these regimes. Chemistry, physics, anatomy, biology. You come to me, we will talk, and we'll discuss it on Zoom, and you bring your evidence, like this is Mary Schweitzer's evidence, and it's good, it's compelling. You can't go against this. She's showing all the evidence, and they just poo-pooed it, and they really tried to destroy her. That's what actually ended up happening. They destroyed her career. See, this is what I got from academia. Young Earth creationists, crazy people, have widely cited these findings that there's dinosaur bones with blood in them as evidence that dinosaur fossils cannot really be millions of years old. And that is absolutely fact, they are not. And the rock layers are dated to more than 65 million years old. This radioactive carbon dating is crazy because it comes and goes. Anytime there's a flood and rain, there's nucleophilic substitution. The molecules that were there go and new ones come in. They can't really be millions of years old, and that's absolute fact. There's no question whatsoever. All right, so if everything's wrong about the dating, so it can't really be millions of years old. So it is claimed the whole old Earth dating edifice collapses. That's correct. They're 65 million years old, 100 million years old. That's insane. And that's how all these layers formed? No, those layers were from tissues. And then we get down to soft tissues and the sizes of the creatures I've shown. There are multiple reasons why these claims are false. I have read through most of Schweitzer's papers on this topic, reviewed the key findings from the 25-page article posted on Letters to Creationists about dinosaur soft tissue. Lots of data and literature references that it is the place to go. For those who do not want to wade through all that information, here are some key takeaways. All right, remember this. They had no idea about the hot water flood. They're talking about tissues and proteins identified in these bones. And they're talking about washing all the bones down and finding these collagens and all this. Now, it says, besides the effect of iron, being in contact, iron is the blood, being in contact with the mineral walls of the pores and being sealed in these tiny pores away from enzymes and other body chemicals that can act to preserve the remnants of the original proteins, and they do it flawlessly. Also, if soft tissue is initially dried out before it decays, and after the hot saltwater flood, it was parboiled, and then if it was in a certain area in a condition like mine were, they washed off, and then they dried out, and it undergoes changes that make it more stable, even if it is later rehydrated. Yes, absolutely. It's stable, it's solid, it's stone. It's just like my goose right here. That's a goose head. He died laying like this in the flood. This side's flat. All of my stuff is flat on one side, and it's all perfect on the other side. And all the collagens are turned to feldspar because even the feathers, you see the feather pattern in his head? Even feathers turn to feldspar because they're made of collagens. Collagens are a rubbery, fabricy matrix of a material that's your skin, it coats your organs, it does all that. That's where its actual artery is. The neck is right here. If you get in the right light and so forth, you can see the anatomy. I mean, it's a goose. Now, and I have so many of these things, and I showed you, I'm sure I already showed you, I have some that are DNA tested and CAT scanned and everything else. That's a bone. Now, they don't stay bone. There's no bone left to them because what happens is nucleophilic substitution and invasion. Calcium, you see this? Calcium's way down here. And that can get invaded very easily by silicates and all of these different minerals up in this area because they have a lot of extra electrons, and they attach to the calcium, change its characteristic, turn it into basalt or all kinds of different things. But it doesn't stay calcium like a bone. Now, this backs this up. It says, also, if soft tissue is initially dried out before it decays, it undergoes changes that make it more stable, even if it's later rehydrated. And I do rehydrate them all the time, and then they rebleed. Thus, several plausible mechanisms are known to help explain the preservation of these flexible tissues, and there are likely other factors yet to be discovered, like the hot boiling water from almost getting impacted by Venus. All right, as I have shown for years, there's a wide variation in the tissue decay. Some lungs will turn into like perfectly preserved lungs. Some of them will turn into just quartz. I show these things over and over and over. All right, I talked about Mary Schweitzer. Here it is right now. This is September 2017. This is 12 years after she announced her discovery. And she was on 60 Minutes and everything. They made a big deal of it. They basically destroyed her. She says, now, I don't care what they say about me. She's staring down her critics in her hunt for dinosaur proteins. Now, unfortunately, Mary doesn't want to talk with me because I'm showing giants and everything else. I'm just so far out of mainstream that I can't get anybody to talk to me, and that's but I am in the world of reality, so I'm going to stay there because I'm looking for eternity to be like God says. All I can hope for is that my children walk in truth, and let me show you some of the texts from the Gospel of Thomas after we look at this for 1 second. But anyway, she found this DNA and she reported on it. And things did not go well for her. And again, this guy that worked with her, he was fired, I guess, and he got $1 million settlement as far or something like that. No, don't quote me on that kind of stuff, but it was a real fiasco. Real fiasco, and I tried to get a hold of her and work with her, but she said she only wanted to work with her own stuff, and she didn't want to talk to me. And I said, okay, well, that's the way it is, and that's the way everybody is. Nobody wants to talk to anybody else about anything. I want to have the open discussion about this kind of stuff. All right, she did a lot of work. And she's just like Velikovsky, just like me, just like anybody that actually goes out and actually does the work. So she says, so Schweitzer pushes on, walking briskly across the Badlands in search of fossils, bits of protein, perhaps one day acceptance. I'm not much of a fighter, she says, but I'm very stubborn. Well, I'm a fighter. I wish you'd talk to me, Mary. We can fight this thing together. Okay, let's finish up with Mary Schweitzer. I just want to read you this last part, because this is very, very illuminative. Back in Montana rangeland, Schweitzer's voice sounds heavy as she discusses her critics as though she's built up scar tissue from these encounters. It's taken a bit out of me, she says. Perhaps I'm not cut out for that part. The battles have taken a toll on her funding, too. Her National Science Foundation grants run out in the fall. I worry constantly about keeping the lab going, she says. But as she walks over an arid patch of Hell Creek, she perks up again at the prospect of discovery. It's addictive, she says, scanning the ground for ancient bone. Thanks to a private donor, she's got money for another year and a half, and Capellany has agreed to analyze samples of dinosaur teeth in parallel with her lab, which might offer independent support for her claim that proteins can survive deep time. I've already done this years ago. So Schweitzer pushes on, walking briskly across the Badlands in search of fossils and bits of protein, perhaps one day acceptance. I'm not much of a fighter, she says, but I'm very stubborn. Well, I am both of those things, and I'm here to help you, Mary. Let's get this thing moving. All right, now I was reading that article about Mary Schweitzer and her lab, and they're going to redo the whole lab for contamination, make sure there's no contamination. Well, if you're working with samples and slides and taking it off of surfaces, that's no good. This right here is a human lung. It's been DNA tested, CAT scanned, the whole 9 yards. I drilled into the bottom here to get blood out from the real red bloody spot at the bottom. Now, if you cut this open, it would be saturated with blood. Saturated inside. I drill inside of them. I don't take it from the surface. Let me show you the ones that a buddy of mine got. And now these are mud fossils. I'm willing to donate that to Mary Schweitzer. She can cut it straight open, look at it instantly in the middle, and look and see what's in there. And I can guarantee you, at least down in this area, there will be plenty of red blood left. It's just saturated. I have other ones. I have so much of this stuff. And I'll donate it all. I don't care. I just want it to be known. I want it to be understood. This is a little close-up of the fascia that's on the lung. This is just absolutely red blood. You just cut it down, and then you drill inside, and you no contamination whatsoever. And I was very cautious about the way I collected the samples. No contamination. And it was said it was dense and excellent quality, and they did, what do you call it, some kind of controls to make sure that there was no additional DNA in there. It only came from one source, something like that. Negative controls, that's what it was. All right, you want to see what a lung looks like, how fresh they can be? This, as I probably mentioned, I have people all around the world now that I work with that send me things, and I look at them, and we discuss them and so forth. Now, this is from Gary Evans. This was quite some time ago, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. He sent me this picture, all right? And I'm going to expand it to you and show you what is actually inside this mud fossil. It's a lung. That's a lung. All right. These are all where the alveoli are. This is the black side. This is the red side. Now, I've got better shots of this. Hold on. Okay. You certainly can get some kind of DNA out of that. That's a lung. Now look what happens to them after they dry out. This was in a salt flat over in England. All right, this is it after it dried out. It turns into dust. That's what happens a lot of times. That's called erosion. And yes, things do erode, no question about it. But some of them, if they get dried out in the right conditions, which mine were, so his stayed in a salt flat, they're going to be deteriorating instantly when they come out into the environment. They're erodible, let's put it that way. My stuff didn't. My stuff encapsulated with the feldspar and then was flushed clean, it looks like to me, and dried right out. Now these are all on the surface of the earth. I didn't dig for these. These things were not long ago encased in wet, hot, floody salt waters, which cooked these and stored the contents of them. And every one of them basically is flat on the back. You see, flat as a pancake. All of mine are. And that's because after they dried out, they just sort of flattened and they laid there. Water's probably rained on them, washed all of the really aggressive molecules out. But the real cool thing is that aluminum silicates sealed the surface, the fascia. That's the key. I was going to call this fascia-facilitated fossilization, because that's basically what happened. All of the erodible stuff, the red, bloody, fleshy stuff, sort of erodes away. But if once it's encapsulated in that fascia, that's it. It's in there. It's stuck. Okay, there's a ton more stuff. I've showed Devil's Tower. I've shown the dragon in the desert over Morocco, the fish, all that stuff. I'm not going to go through it again. We're getting into the text of what was written about these things. This is the Nag Hammadi text. These were found right after World War II, as was the Dead Sea Scrolls. Very strange occurrence, right after World War II, where there was like genocide and all that business going on. And they found these scrolls about the origins of Christianity. To me, this is as valid as any other writing. This was written during the time of Christ. These are supposedly the actual words which the living Jesus spoke and which Didymus Judas Thomas wrote down. This is doubting Thomas. He was the scribe. He wrote down and he said, whoever finds interpretation of these sayings will not experience death. Well, I'll tell you something. You will not understand these sayings. Nobody can. But you can certainly try. Listen to this. Jesus himself said, let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will be troubled. Yes, it's very troubling. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished. It is astonishing. And he will rule over the all. And he will rule over the all. Whatever that means. Now, he also talks about everything being unveiled. And right down here, Jesus said, recognize what is in your sight. Recognize what is in your sight. And that which is hidden from you will become plain to you. For there is nothing hidden which will not become manifest. There's never going to be anything that was hidden that I'm going to hide from you. And that anybody should hide from you. But it has all been hidden from you. And this is what this is all about. It's deceit. Now, like I said, some of this stuff is just way over the top. But this is the blessed are the poor. For yours is the kingdom of heaven. When you go through the suffering on life, I think you learn from that, hopefully. That's all I can take away from that. Now, whoever does not hate his father and his mother cannot become a disciple to me. That's, I find, very interesting in a strange way. And whoever does not hate his brothers and sisters and take up his cross in my way will not be worthy of me. Again, a little bit strange, but I have found that people will go against you when you go against what everybody says. If you're not part of the crowd, you are outside the crowd, and maybe you have to go against them. I don't know. Hatred, I don't know. Who hate? My brothers and so forth? I don't know. That's a hard one. Jesus said, whoever has come to understand the world has found only a corpse. Whoever has found a corpse is superior to the world. Well, it's a corpse, I can tell you that. Blessed is the man who has suffered and found life. Well, I found life, and you're going to be, it's a burden, I'm telling you right now. Number 8, he goes against, he talks about the earth again. Yeah, Jesus said, he who has recognized the earth, recognized the world, has found the body. But he who has found the body is superior to the world. I find that pretty interesting. Now, if you find the things that I'm showing are, you realize them and believe them, and you pass the test of being able to understand, well, then you're going to be superior to like 99.99999% of the world. Because trust me, people, their mind shuts off. They don't want to know. The people that are in control realize that if they even look at this and discuss it, they're in trouble. Because there's no way out once you start to discuss this. You know, this is crazy, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to subvert your religion or beliefs. I am just commenting on what I have found and what I think makes sense. And the God that I always thought was the God that brought the flood on its ungodly people was not that God that is the good God. The God that brought that flood was Jupiter, Zeus, who I feel was Satan. And he was the one that subverted God's intentions in the beginning. Because it said they came down, they did all kinds of things, partied up like crazy with the women, they could transform themselves, and Jupiter was talked about as Zeus in many ways. And it says in the ancient text, Jupiter, the feared god Jupiter, gave birth to the fiery comet Venus, which ravaged the earth and destroyed Mars. Everything makes sense once you realize that literally everything is biological. And once you start reading back through the ancient texts, it talks about dividing up bodies to create all of these solar bits and pieces. Now, this is what came to me this morning. This is what started me on this. I was thinking about, who was Enoch? I know he was supposedly walked with God and he was God's guy and all this. Was he a good guy or a bad guy? Was he working with the good God or the bad God? He was going through all these torture chambers and everything, people hanging on chains and all that stuff. I don't know. I just don't know anymore. I really got to be honest with you. But let's listen to what this says. Treasure in fragile clay jars. We are made of clay. Therefore, since God in His mercy has given us this new way, we never give up. We reject all shameful deeds and underhanded methods. We don't try to trick anyone or distort the Word of God. We tell the truth before God, and all who are honest know this. If the good news we preach is hidden behind a veil, it is hidden only from the people who are perishing. The ones that are holding a veil up in front of the things I'm showing are the ones that are going to perish. Satan, who is the god of this world. Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. And that's academia. I'm sorry. I'm just sorry for them. I really am. And I mean that in the nicest way. To not engage and claim to be professors is not right. It's just not right. When you profess, you have to engage. They refuse to engage with me because they are not allowed. They're holding a veil. They're holding a veil in front of everything and saying, don't look at this guy. If you look at him, we will fail you in your college pursuits and we'll make you look like a fool. And you'll have wasted your money and you'll go home as a failure because you speak about God. And really, that's what it's come down to. That's really what it's come down to. It's really not going to end well for them. And everything that I've read is just unbelievable how well understood this was even way back then, how they talk about the teachers will well, let me grab a couple of them and I'll show you what they say. But they are unable to see the glorious light of the good news of God and Jesus and peace and love and not taking advantage. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God. That's what it says. If he looks just exactly like God, made in his own image, Christ was a well-known figure. There's no mystery here. This was not some fairy tale for kids. This was all extremely well recorded, and you can see how much time and effort was put into it. So this is going to be a deep dive. I mean deep, because the things that I always either didn't believe in at all or had beliefs in, I find both of those things, I have to believe virtually everything that was written now in some degree or another, and then try to interpret it to what its meaning is. Some of it's going to be meaningless. Some of it will be just confusing, very confusing. Almost everything is confusing. Let's just start with that. Because God, from a nothingness, from a non-physicalness, said, I want to create something. And then went on about to create everything. That's how I see it. That's how it was written, too. All right, this is from the book of Enoch, who was supposed to have met with God. And this is from his meeting with God, God explaining how he made everything. Now, what God was he talking about? The God that made everything, I would have to say, was the God Almighty. And the God that took over, who was Satan, and started running this world and drove it into the ground, was not this God that we're talking about here. That's how I would have to take this, because here's what he says he did. He says, before anything existed at all, from the very beginning, whatever exists I created from the non-existent, from the invisible to the visible. Listen, Enoch, pay attention to these words of mine, for not even to my angels have I explained my secrets, nor related to them their origins, nor my endlessness and inconceivableness. As I devise the creatures, as I am making them known to you today, for before any visible things had come into existence, I, the One, moved around in the invisible things like the sun, from east to west, from west to east. But the sun has rest in himself. Yet I did not find rest, because everything was not yet created. And I thought up the idea of establishing a foundation to create a visible creation. And then he explains about how he created all of the stuff. Now, the thing that I wanted to show you is about the light, because that's where everything is made of light, 100% made of light. It's all the same particles. This I find just absolutely fascinating. How God founded the water and surrounded it with light and established it on 7 islands. He said, I gave the command, let there be taken some of the light, which is the white particles, and some of the darkness, which is the black particles. And I said, become thickened and be wrapped around with light. Now that is exactly what I have found in light, is the darkness wrapped around with the light. Then he said, and I spread it out and it became water. Exactly. That's exactly what would happen. And I spread it out above the darkness, below the light, and thus I made the solid waters, that is to say, the bottomless. Down in the bottom, he made regular water. And I made a foundation of light around the water, which is outside. That's where just the particles of light are. I created 7 great circles. And then it goes on to talk about creating everything. But the light is what everything is made of. You see that? Exactly what it says. Take some of the black and some of the white and mix them together and let them be thickened and turn them into light. Then turn the light into water. And here, the light and particles, after you have your light from these little particles, together they make protons and neutrons and so forth. And in masses they make water. So this is the atomic vapor, which collects in certain ways to form different molecules. Okay, so they took some of the black and some of the white, mixed it up together, and then as it all started to collect, it turned into like this. That's water. Oxygen, huge oxygen, 16 times bigger than the hydrogens. So you have two hydrogens and one oxygen, H2O, becomes water. Now, the reason it becomes water is it starts to compress. As you get down closer to the Earth, you get more and more compression of the atmosphere. You get more and more water. They separated the water from above, which is, this is nothing more than water. And it squirts, just like water squirts. You see that? It squirts. Just exactly like water squirts. And they separated the water from above, which they call a firmament, which is our ionosphere, which is the top layer. It's 2,700 degrees out there, because that's where it scrubs against the waters above, which are just the ions, the little particles that float around out there. We're scrubbing through them all the time. So you have your waters below, you have your firmament, let's call it, your ionosphere, and you have your waters above. And everything is made from those waters. When he said, let there be light, he meant let there be life, let there be everything. Let it all start now. Okay, well, I think I'm going to leave it at this for today, but what you should do is come up here to Africa and go up and check out this gigantic fish here that is being attacked by this gigantic dragon here. And there's a dragon's head, and you can see all the stuff that he's spitting down at him. And this is the dragon's throat that runs all the way down, and these are the dragon's scales. Now you come back and look at them carefully when you have time, but this is what it is. And this dragon was written about in the library of Apollodorus in the BC era. And these are the legs, and he claims that the legs were like the thighs of a human, and then the legs, the coils, because this is Typhon, the coils wrapped all the way around, and they can go back up and touch his head. And this is one of those coils right here. And this is the body tissue, the leathery look of that body tissue. You see this? This is not just sand dunes. I looked at this very, very carefully. And if you brought that to a tannery and showed them this, they would say, yes, that's leather. You see, let me come down here. There's places that are, look at this. You see this? The other ones are a little eroded. Things get eroded, but not this area. This area here looks just like fresh leather. It's exactly, I took my leather coat out and looked at it in a microscope. It's exactly identical. No difference whatsoever, except that mine was flattened out and tanned. But if you took this to a tannery and you showed them this, and then you showed them that, and you showed them this, and these little areas around it, that's how your skin invades and turns into leather. You see that? Not an accident, my friends. So, these ancient myths from Greece and so forth about this giant creature, Typhon, attacking this fish, they all appear to be true. Now, how you deal with this is up to you. I'm looking for an eternity of reality. Now, if you want to just continue on walking around in circles, that's okay. I have no problem with you doing that. And, you know, I have no problem with anybody doing anything they want. I just don't want to be attacked by people that have no evidence and just want to start trouble and argue and all that. So I got to be honest with you, I put them out of my life. Those kind of people I no longer bother with. So if that's, you know, what I want to engage in is discussion about what we're really seeing. Now, if I'm wrong, that's okay. You can discuss it and send me some evidence and proof showing that I'm wrong. I've been wrong a lot. And in this realm, I am not comfortable whatsoever. But I've done as much research as anyone. If you start with Velikovsky and look at Worlds in Collision, and he's got like 3 or 4 books that, you know, and they destroyed him. 1950, they forced his book off the bookshelves and being on the bestseller list 11 weeks in a row, and the academics could not tolerate it. They made him take it off the bookshelves. They said they would never buy any more books from the publisher, so they did. They took it off. Now, this is what happens with, it seems to be denial and fraud right now in the academic realm. I can't see any truth there. They won't engage in anything with substance. All my stuff, as I showed you, I have the stuff. I'm not far from Yale. No, I can't bring it there. They won't look at it. I mean, I've tried everybody, literally everybody. And nobody is interested in it because of its spectacular nature. And it really causes a lot of upheaval in the things that they have professed to be the ones that you look for knowledge. Well, if I look up here and I see a dragon's head, and all the way back down his body, and at the other end of his body I see his dragon-scaled tail, and I ask a geologist, or I asked Peabody Museum about this, and they call me an idiot and laugh at me. Now, I'm not saying they did, but trust me, everybody has been. Everybody that I've talked to, they lose everything when they start speaking about this, because people put them in a realm that is very uncomfortable to be in. I know that because I've been in it for many years now. And I am not going to turn around. There's no way you could turn me around. I would not be turned around. You know, once you walking in truth, I don't care. You can do anything you want. You know, I don't want to be burned at the stake. You know, but outside of that, you can do just about anything you want. Because I'm looking for eternity. And the more I see, the more abuse you take during this life, the better eternity you get. that's what it sounds like. No, I haven't taken a lot of abuse. I'm not complaining. I am not, you know, I'm not a victim. As a matter of fact, I've had a spectacular life and been rewarded with everything you've ever. I was a bad person. I was a real bad person when I was young. Very, you know, I'm ashamed of myself. I'm not going to confess to you about my sins, but trust me, I had a litany of them, and I probably would have never resolved any of this without finding the mud fossils. Once I found the mud fossils, you know, being an honest, well, let me put this, being curious. Honesty really has nothing to do with it. Well, it does. If you're curious and you find something that disrupts your you know, normal routine, you say, wait a minute, this is what you've been thinking is wrong. You can be dishonest by just being dishonest to yourself. I can't see that. I can't understand that, how people can do that. And I see it every day, all day long, every day. Either that, just exactly what Jesus said. He says they'll always be seeing, but they'll never see. They'll always hear, but they'll never hear. Those are the ones I don't want. And I don't want them around me either. So, Jesus, I'm with you on that one, my friend.